Hello there. I'm David A. Specht, and I want to be your coach. If there's anything that I have learned in my 30 plus years of leadership and coaching, I have learned that mindset is everything. Join me and my guests as we explore the positives and negatives of that thing between our ears. This is Keep This in Mind. Hello there. Welcome to Keep This in Mind, brought to you by SpechtHealth.com. I am David A. Specht, and it is, drumroll please, it is interview day. What does that mean, David? It means this day that we record the interview podcast. I have a new friend. Imagine that. I can make friends still. A new friend. His name is Josh Smith, and I'm going to, hopefully I don't butcher his story, because Josh and I met through podcasting platform, a Facebook group. We have very similar podcasts, although very different backgrounds as far as our story goes. But one of Josh's big things is he wants to help people find their voice. He wants them to be able to tell their story, because we both believe that your story matters, and it can matter in a great way to somebody else who may be going through something. And Josh, he is I guess you would say he's the founder of, let me look it up so I don't butcher it, YourSpeakingVoice.biz.
Yep.
And he's also the podcast host of Speaking from the Heart podcast. By the way, I did listen to some of it. We had that discussion off air a couple weeks ago. Great interview podcast. He really does try to debunk some of normal thinking that people tend to either think about themselves or think about situations. His guests do the same thing. And it all comes back to his story. So, Josh, I'm going to that was a long-winded way to say that you have a story that I believe matters to our audience. It's about a shifting mindset. And since this is keeping this in mind, kind of tell people your background, what the big moment was for you, and then how you move forward from that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks a lot, David, for allowing me to be on your show. Really, I was looking forward to this. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here with your listeners as well. I have to say that I am pretty young. I am a 36-year-old male and single, so I will put that out there for the ladies out there.
Ladies.
Yes. But I will say that my life is filled with not only the things that we have been through in our lives, not only the professional aspects, but a lot of the personal things. And I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, still live in Pennsylvania. That's where my business is located at as well. And I have been through a lot of things in my life that normally you don't hear the words being called mentally retarded, you're fat, you're ugly, you're not going to amount to anything as common words that you often hear growing up. And no, that didn't come from my parents or anything like that. I definitely had a great upbringing, but it came from really the people that surrounded me. And that happened as soon as I even exit the room. My mom found out from the doctor that, hey, he's having some problems breathing, and he's also having some problems with development as I've gotten older too. I think that he might be having some problems with being able to process things, being able to understand things. He might not be able to be as smart as other kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have been through a lot of those different diagnoses growing up, and I have had special education. I had gone through school with an IEP, or individual educational plan. For those that aren't familiar with that, that's usually a bunch of teachers and specialists pretty much testing your assessment as you go along. And you might even notice from time to time I even have a speech impediment, which is something that I've had to work through growing up, saying words with R's and TH sounding words. So don't have me say thermometer. Oops, I already said it. That would be one of my crutch words I would have a big problem with. But as I gotten older and gotten through a lot of different things with that side of the house, the biggest problem I had was trying to have relationships with people. And I mean, not just relationships that are like a romantic sense, but having actual authentic relationships with people, friendship-wise. So, for example, I remember one friend from high school, his name's John. and we met in the 6th grade. He was one of those people that understood what was going on and was one of the biggest inspirations in my life, kind of helping me get through some of the tougher years where people would claim that, yeah, you're not as good as you think you are, or you're not as athletic as you could be. And after I got through high school and got through all of those teasing moments in my life, I finally was able to go on to college. So remember I said earlier about the doctor that was telling my mom that I was going to be mentally retarded? Yeah, that guy went on, graduated from high school, and went on to college, mind you. So I had to go through a lot of those things that most people don't have to deal with when it comes to just challenging the school system, where you thought that it would be the advocate for somebody, especially if you're trying to figure out what's going on in your life and what you need to do to take from point A to point B. I had a lot of those issues of trying to just overcome some of those diagnoses that were false, essentially. Went on through college, went on through went on to get a master's degree. A few years after that, I got a second master's. So yeah, I was able to do so much when it came to not only the education world, but even starting out with the state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which as of this day, I've been working for over 13 years. It was one of those things that as I continued to grow, I wasn't satisfied though, because even growing up, I always had this in the back of my mind of I needed to do something that other people would understand and recognize that I was worthy of their attention. I was worthy of whatever claim to fame that was. So I was always striving, always working so hard to try to get to that pinnacle moment, whether that was being recognized or just being appreciated by others. Well, needless to say, that was such a toxic mindset for myself that it was on February 23rd of 2020 that it all came to a head. This was after years of just trying to figure out, why aren't people understanding me? Why aren't people respecting me? I'm putting all this hard work in. Why is this happening to me? I literally had the thought, David, of killing myself. And that was the moment that day, which ironically enough was the day before my 33rd birthday, that everything just came crashing down around me. Just people that I was hanging around with. I didn't feel like they were supporting me. I had some relationships with some very toxic people that essentially they were walking away from me. It all came to really being handcuffed by 2 officers into a back of a squad car after somebody noticed that I was just not the same person I usually am, and seeing that sort of toxicity being flooded out of me. And I remember that day, and I even talk about this on my podcast too, about going in the back of that car and the officers asking, "Why are you doing this? Why is this happening in your life?" Of course, any good officer is being trained and he wants to really understand what's actually happening with the situation, kind of having that investigative mind. And I remember this as clear as day. And this is something that has stuck with me the rest of my life. I literally said to the officer as we were driving to the hospital where they were going to do further evaluation of me, I said to him, "I have no idea. This isn't like me, and I need to get myself back in shape." So ever since that day, I stayed in a mental institution for 72 hours. I was released. And that was the start of a journey in which now I have weaved myself into realizing that those issues that I had as a kid weren't necessarily my fault, which I take responsibility for all the actions that I do. But it was also because I was misdiagnosed. Ironically enough, 4 months ago, I was diagnosed as being autistic. And that explains so much of my social awkwardness, some of my emotional issues. And it has led me to starting some of the things that I work with clients now to destroy the mindset that allow us to always think that we have to do it a certain way, and to transform them in a way in which can not only adapt to this world that we're in, but also help them realize their true potential. So through all of those things, I think that I've led a life now where it's sort of redeeming in that fateful moment that one evening.
Yeah, and I think of the books I've read, the stories I've followed, right? There is always that moment. It's that one thing. It's the rock bottom experience sometimes. It's the tragic event sometimes that really causes, it's almost like it's a pattern interrupt, right?
Yeah.
Which in the pattern interrupt, it gives you the opportunity to reframe.
Yeah.
And some people do and some people don't. Let's be honest. And
Mhm.
in your story, and I want to go back to a couple of things that you said. Number one, the diagnoses, right? We trust those that are in authority. We trust those that are educated beyond us, and sometimes they get it wrong.
Mhm.
But yet it can frame an entire lifestyle. Your parents raised you in a certain way because of what they were told at your birth. Your schools, educators treated you a certain way because dating all the way back to that. Okay. So we're up to this point of, and it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that with every accomplishment you made in the pre 2020 era, it wasn't enough. You didn't feel like you had accomplished anything. You were out to prove something. You were out to prove that doctor was wrong. You were out to prove that society was wrong. But with every accomplishment, you didn't get the sense of I've done it. I have proven them wrong. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, you are, David. And really, I think that started when I was a young kid. And as young kids are very impressionable when it comes to some of the stigmas, some of the sort of attitudes, some of the perceptions that we often face in our life. And I think that carried forward, not just because of that one doctor that told my mom this, but there were teachers, there were principals. I mean, I literally remember sitting in the principal's office one day, and you'll find this story fascinating in itself. I was sitting in the principal's office one day because someone said to one of the teachers, because somebody was talking to me about hunting, which was one of the big things that we do over in Pennsylvania. We like to hunt quite a lot. Go to deer season, and you'll hear all kinds of different talk about, yeah, I got my rifle here ready to go and all that. Someone was talking to me about that, and they were talking about specifically archery season because that's where we were in at that time. Well, some girls overheard the conversation and they thought that I was going to bring some sort of bow and arrow to school and start shooting people with the
Oh,
bow
wow.
and arrow. It was completely taken out of context. It was something that even to this day, I keep saying that's not true. That is not how that conversation happened. But this, you have to keep in mind, was sort of after the years of Columbine and all those different school massacres, which God rest all the people that have been affected by that, because even to this day, we still plagued by that. But I remember being called in. My mom had to be brought in and then had to explain all this. And I said, prove it. Prove that I said that. And they said, it doesn't matter. It's zero tolerance. You have to go home. And those are the things that I think also contributed to nobody wanting to listen, nobody wanting to appreciate what I was able to do or even take the time to understand. So I think that really shaped some of who I am back then. And even to this day, I still have those voices in my head like, are you doing enough? Are you going to do enough? And I have to silence them from not only what I am doing with myself, but even the communication that I have with my therapist. Because I'll be real, it's been 3.5 years since that fateful day that I said I wanted to end my life. And I've had a great therapist that I've had to walk through that and have had to deal with a lot of that trauma from those days too. So I think to answer your question, yes, it is something that it started back then, it builds, and it got to a breaking point. And it took for some people, it takes a little bit sooner than others, but it took over 33 years to finally say, I've had enough. I can't handle this pressure anymore.
So, as you progressed over the last 3 years, um, to me, and this is what I've learned in health coaching as well, the idea of paying it forward, helping somebody else really does bring not just a level of satisfaction, but a level of accountability to your own journey, right? It kind of hold, if somebody's looking up to you, you kind of think a little harder before you take an action. I want to talk to you about how you've transitioned. Are you probably still transitioning with the idea of paying it forward? Because I don't know if you saw the correlation through your story, but it was like, nobody's listening. My voice isn't being heard. And now, across the 2020 threshold here, now you're like, I'm helping people have their voice be heard. I'm helping people find their voice. Tell me about that. That, like, what moment did you say, you know what? I'm starting to receive from this. I'm starting to improve from this. And I know there's people out there that are in my boat, maybe not exactly the same boat, but there are a lot of boats out there of people who need help finding their voice. Talk about that for a minute.
It's so funny. I had not to bring up the podcast again, but I had an episode in which I talked about the different boats that we kind of interact with. And I drew the analogy of actually a lighthouse, which ironically enough, it's one of my episodes coming up. It's probably going to be released by the time this comes out, that has talked about being that guiding light for others that might be lost at sea. And for me, when I went through what I went through 3.5 years ago, I want to point out a couple things. First off, this happened, like I said, the day before my 33rd birthday. So obviously that has some significance in itself. Turning 1 year older, that has some ramifications in itself. But the second thing that happened is, if you put 2 and 2 together, this was February 23rd, 2020. The world as we knew it changed on March 13th, 2020. So it was literally 2 or 3 weeks before everything shut down. The world shut down because of this unknown disease, this unknown sort of variant, this virus that was happening. So that really stunted me. That stunted me even more. I continued to have issues even after I left for observation, where I was sort of questioning myself. And I remember this one friend, his name is Chris. And I know I will share this with Chris. He was one of the people that was really behind me at that time. He was texting me and saying, "Hey, are you okay? Like, do you need to talk?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I'm like, I'm really a mess and I need to get this out." I just remember that being that big burden inside of me of just wanting to unleash it. And yeah, I was going to therapy still, was wearing a mask and still going to it in person, mind you, on a weekly basis, which I was still trying to figure out what is causing all this. And keep in mind, I didn't know anything about this autism diagnosis at that point. So I'm still kind of like feeling, oh, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on in me. Something is just trying to get out, and I don't know what it is. And I just feel like there's something buried. The longest time, I lied to myself as to what those reasons were. It was more of, oh, I need to have more money to put behind it. So I would spend money and then I put myself more in debt. So that didn't help me. There would be, oh, I need to just get out more. I need to be more social with people. Well, that didn't help me either because I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. So the difference being, I don't feed my energy from other people.
Right.
I have to go in my little cocoon and like snuggle up in a weighted blanket so that I would feel so much better. So that was the other thing. But something started to change of course of that time, where I've always been this service-oriented person. And I think growing up, it wasn't just the fact that my parents, I grew up on a farm. I really learned the responsibility of taking care of animals and other things. I just had this part for wanting to help other people because although other people didn't help me, I wanted to help them, not only with what they were going through, but maybe there was some sort of volunteer activity. So like going to a food bank, that would make me feel so much better. Or serving in an organization where I know I was making a difference. That was applying my skills. So when I opened the business, Your Speaking Voice, earlier this year, it was really about not just figuring out what I could do to give back to people with all the things that I've learned, which I do a lot of life coaching. I do a lot of the public speaking because that's really something that I was able to do to really express myself, is just tell my story as being an effective public speaker. But I wanted to make other people feel equipped to be able to do those sort of skills, to have those abilities. So all of that came to, what can I do to ultimately give back, to ultimately create that best version of myself? Not only the best version of myself that I have my clients do, but also for me. And I think as a result of all these experiences, David, I have to say that those were things that helped me to create not only this business, but also helped me get over what I've been feeling for the longest time, which was this sort of, I need to do something that will impress everybody. Because by opening a business, I now know that I am able to do that. I am capable. And if I can get $1 from somebody that would say to me, yeah, you're worth it, that means a lot. But you know what means even more? It's about the relationships with people that I have formed and been able to just help them see this completely different side of themselves that they have never seen before. And that was something that I wish so many years ago, somebody would have came in my life and did that. So that's why I just feel impassioned to help people, because I really want to see them get to that other side. Because just like a ship lost at sea, I know that if we had a lighthouse that was erected so that we can guide them all into a port or someplace where they need to go, that is something worth so much more than money itself.
Mm-hmm. So, and let's turn the focus on to your speaking voice. What are some of the first things? Because you've helped several people. We've talked about your clients. What are some of the commonalities that between clients? Maybe there's like 3 things that all clients come to you with, and because we do see patterns. I tell people all the time, the number on the scale is only a symptom of what's going on between the ears. So tell me about what are some of the commonalities of people that you're serving, and maybe I'll offer a few starting steps, if you will, for somebody who may be feeling the same things.
Yeah. And I have had a lot of different clients that have come through my doors that some of them are just simply not ready. Now, I have to be fully transparent. I don't take on anybody, meaning that if you're not going to do anything that I'm offering, it's not going to help you. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and be able to understand that that thing in between 2 of your ears is something that can change you if you're willing to be changed. So I always meet with a client first. That's the initial consultation for me. I want to make sure that it's a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, I'm not just saying, well, see ya. I might not be the best one. And I have literally given other leads to other people that I know are much more equipped with what they're trying to achieve, hands down. But for me, I've had clients that have literally sat here, have talked about divorce. They have talked about the different things that they have going on in their brain, in which why they can't get out of bed. They might be suffering from depression or anxiety, which I remember going into work feeling those ways and not unsure or uncertain about what I needed to do next. I've had people that are just looking to find that answer that's deep inside of them, that they already knew what the answer is, but because of what they have had as an upbringing. So those people, those same teachers, those same individuals that have been supposedly role models, or at least are supposed to be paid as role models, aren't nearly doing that. And so those have been a lot of the people that I have encountered. I've even encountered some people that have been through the autism spectrum, which has gone from being having Asperger's to having OCD or ADD, things of that nature. And we're working on a plan as to what can we do to get you from point A to point B. Because I'm not saying that everybody has this plan that says, okay, here you go. We're going to go through these 3 steps. We're going to do it all together. So David, if you're my client, I'd be like, David, here's our 3 steps. This is what we're going to do. you probably turn your head cockeyed and be like, what? That's not what I signed up for. Like, I got completely different goals here. I want to be able to understand what those people are going through. If I know that I can provide some value to them, I will work with them. And so that has been my catalyst. I've been really fortunate to meet so many people in just the first 6 months of being open. And I really look forward to even meeting more people like that. But that's really what this is about, is having not just that understanding of the problem, but having that authentic connection.
Very good. So as we try to wrap things up, I know people's commutes are relatively short, and we don't want to get episodic here and have version 2, version 3, version 4. But I do want to touch on this, and that is one of the very best ways to help yourself is by helping others. I believe that with everything that's within me, because it does take the focus off of you and your own shortcomings. It does help you. I also believe, number 2, that an expert only has to be one step ahead of the person that they're helping. So knowing that, again, I don't know everything about food. I don't know everything about personal development. I'm learning just as you are. What are some of the things that you have learned since you've stepped into this space that you're now helping other people with?
Yeah, I'll leave it to just the top 3, and keep them short too. The first thing that I've learned is that it's about the people and what their relationships are. So it isn't just about taking money and being like, here you go, I'm giving you a service. It's about learning what those people are and identifying and being able to change with them, because those people are always going to have different things when they walk through the door. So I try to learn that. 2 is make relationships, not just with people that your clients are with, but for anybody. It doesn't matter what industry they're in, because if you make those relationships, especially the business people that are listening to this, pay attention to this. I have a woman that I work with that does my advertising. They're a husband and wife team. They have been so incredible in supporting my small business, and they helped me out. I literally didn't have a website about 2 or 3 weeks before I opened, and they came to my rescue because another company, which I'm not going to mention their name, swindled me out of $800 and never got anything for it. These guys came to my rescue, and that's been an authentic connection. So relationships, really important. But the third thing that I've learned in this journey is just being able to be open to the possibilities. Be flexible. It doesn't mean that you're regimented and you have to be stuck in your ways, because there's an answer to more than one answer to one problem that you're facing. And understanding that and being that flexible allows you to have a vast amount of opportunities that you never thought imaginable if you're willing to have that mindset. So people, relationships, and just having an open mindset to the possible answers. Those are my 3 things I've learned.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Josh. Tell everybody on the audience how they can follow you, get a hold of you, engage with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, David, again, for allowing me to be on the show. My business is Your Speaking Voice, LLC. You can find me on my website, yourspeakingvoice.biz, B-I-Z. On there, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about me, the services I provide, which include not only life coaching, but I do some professional development and also public speaking coaching as well. And you can also have an opportunity to schedule a free consultation with me. We talk for about 45 minutes, an hour to see where you're at, what's a good fit, and also talk about my process. You can schedule that directly on my website. If you are not interested in doing that and you want to reach out to me directly, you can text me or call me at this number. It's 717-422-6724. That is my business number, which you can access. And in my email, you can reach me at contact, CONTACT, at yourspeakingvoice.biz. But definitely would love to talk to a lot of you, and definitely don't be afraid to reach out to me. I do not only in-person appointments here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, but I meet with anybody on Zoom anywhere across the world.
Fantastic. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Keep This in Mind. Remember to like, follow, subscribe on any platform that you're receiving this on. And I'll close it with what I always say: applied knowledge is power. God bless. That is going to do it for this episode of Keep This in Mind. For more, visit davidaspecht.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and remember, applied knowledge is power. God bless.